this building through the middle stuff is not easy. OKC made a decision. We're going to build from the bottom. Okay. Utah's going to build from the bottom. Okay. Detroit was going to build from the bottom. It took them forever, by the way. This is the thing about Heat fans. They're totally disingenuous. There is no way they would tolerate what Pistons fans were just put through. No way. And you cannot tell me that Detroit is a bad basketball market, because it is not.
Just what's your biggest takeaway from this series in terms of not just like, okay, the Knicks are this and the Pacers are this, but from a larger perspective and what this signals about how to build a team in 2025 now, how to build a contender, because at this point we have to call them contenders in 2025.
I think the first thing we need to acknowledge is that the Pacers are kind of exceptional in their front office. So what we do a lot is we talk about models, right? Like how you build under this CBA, whether or not it's free agency or it's trades, or it's undrafted free agents, or it's hitting in the draft, or it's tanking, or it's playing from the middle. But the reality is that whatever it is you're going to do, you better be good at it. Like that, and that's the single biggest thing. And the way that Indiana built, and people got mad at me for this tweet last night, when honestly I was just trolling. I'm sorry, I just was bored. This tweet about how Heat fans, Pacers have built by doing everything Heat fans don't want the Heat to do, and it is somewhat true, because of course everybody comes into that with their own bias. So the usuals who just want the Heat to say, hey, give us Giannis. Because we said so, we're nice, and we live in South Florida, which is basically what half of Heat Twitter wants. That I'm not going to be able to speak to those people. But what I was saying in general was,
That's me either.
The Pacers built from the middle. They didn't tank. They were forced to trade Paul George. They were forced to. Then they got Oladipo and Sabonis for him. Then they were forced to trade Oladipo, essentially, or part ways with Oladipo. And then they were forced at a certain, and then not forced, but then they made the decision. I shouldn't say forced. They made a decision to trade Sabonis when he'd already become an all-star, because they saw that was maxed out. And they wanted to get a younger guard. I'm not saying that the Heat shouldn't look at that. We've done episodes about trading Tyler at his peak and maybe getting somebody who's still on a rookie contract. Maybe it's an Ivy or somebody like that. Like we've discussed this. We've done episodes on that. So I'm not. I was trolling a little bit, but what I was saying was what the majority of Heat fans want is not smart building through the middle or any of that kind of stuff. What the majority of them want is to say, "Hi, I'm Pat Riley. Rings, beer,
rings, money,
come back,
beach."
Right? like, I mean, it's Memorial Day. I'm at my pool. It's nice. Okay, I get the attraction of South Florida, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think the majority of Heat fans are realistic about some of this stuff, and so I guess what I'm talking in terms of building, the way the Knicks built and the Pacers built, I think what is consistent with the two of them is that they took some risk. Okay, the Knicks had a team that was competitive with Randall. They moved him and DiVincenzo, as you know, for Towns. Then they also moved, and obviously they moved the 5 picks for Bridges, which I would not have done, but they probably wouldn't do it again. But they did it. They took a chance, and the Pacers, of course, took the chance of making the trade for Sabonis for Haliburton, and then they also traded 3 picks for basically for Siakam. So
I have
they
them
made
here.
bold moves.
I have them here if we want to get into it, because
Yeah.
if you look at the Knicks' entire starting 5, I guess not with last night because Mitchell Robinson started, but if you look at their entire starting 5, all those guys were traded for essentially, or acquired in free agency, like Jalen Brunson. Like Brunson was an acquisition. Towns, we established, was traded for. Josh Hart was traded for controversially because they gave up Cam Reddish and like a pick, and
Second
Knicks
round
fans.
pick, right?
No, I think it was a first. But I have to.
Oh, that's right. I thought there was some conditions in there, but you're right. I
It
thought
was. But
I
gonna tell,
thought the Heat should have traded for Josh Hart and said so at the time. So I don't.
I remember.
I mean, it wasn't particularly controversial to me. I didn't think Cam Reddish could play, but you're right. Look, they made moves, and I think that's where Heat fans are throwing it back in my face because they're saying, "Well, they made moves." Well, the Heat made a move too. They traded for Terry Rozier. Not the best move.
You talked about the Pacers being forced to trade Oladipo. Um, like the Heat were forced to trade Jimmy. We'll have to see how that turns out. But and going back to
Mhm,
that, they also traded for Mikal Bridges. That was
mhm.
the famous 5 first-round picks deal where
Yeah,
also traded. It turned out to be like a bigger deal than that, but it was mainly
mhm,
those draft picks, and then like Bojan Bogdanovic was part of the deal, uh,
right.
just for salary purposes and what have you. But that was like the main crux of it. So these teams took risks, and the thing with Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo for Karl-Anthony Towns, I said it at the time, one is incredibly risky, but one that the Knicks could afford to take, and two, they made the deal knowing, hey, this is probably it. Like
Mhm,
this is the team. You know, there's not much else you could do unless now you're gonna flip one of the main guys. By the way, OG Anunoby also, that was another big
right.
one where it's like you took two
Mhm,
young guys who
mhm,
are blossoming. I wouldn't call them rising stars, but it wouldn't shock me if RJ Barrett made an all-star game at some point. I know that sounds crazy
mhm.
right now, but he was actually playing well before, injuries. And then this year was just very uneasy for the Raptors. And then Emmanuel quickly is a good player. He became a good player.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
think his contract is very healthy.
Yeah.
But
Mm,
like
yeah.
two players, and they got OG Anunoby with that. And it's like they
Mhm.
made all these big deals after acquiring all the draft capital to do it. And I think that's the challenge, is getting the draft capital, because it feels like four teams have all the picks. Ben
Yes.
Goldberger says, "What up, Brian? Ethan, glad the Knicks stepped up last night. Glad this is going to be a series after all." I agree with that. And as someone who's doing the watch parties at the Post YouTube channel for every Knick playoff game, I will take the extra work gladly, as long as the Knicks keep winning. Though I don't think they're going to finish out this series, to be honest. But we'll see. Sayless D
Mhm.
says the star hunting is not for us anymore. We just need to draft well enough to keep building our team. Free agency is a thing of the past. I don't know if free agency is a thing of the past, but free agency is not what it was 15 years
Oh,
ago.
hoarding for free agency is not the way to
Hoarding
do it.
for
You
yeah.
you 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 can find ways to get guys, but I think what the point on the Knicks is, if you look at it, they drafted pretty well. Barrett was not a bad pick. Quickly was a good pick for where he was taken.
Mhm.
That allows you to do other things. The thing they've been willing to do that the Heat have to this point not done, I don't know if it's not that they're not willing, but they've not done, is then if you draft a player who's a good player, be willing to move the player, right? Like that's the thing. See, that's where the Knicks traded quickly, right? Okay, look, they acquired Randall. Randall blossomed with them. Okay, became a fan favorite in the city. They
Free
drafted
agent signing,
Barrett,
by the way.
free agent signing, correct?
Yeah.
They drafted Barrett. Okay, but it was not a ballyhooed free agent signing at the time. I mean, Randall
No, it
had,
was
with the way.
panned because it was the same summer as Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. That's why.
Correct, correct, correct. Okay, and with the Lakers, of course, they had a bunch of young players that they moved off of, and then he played better with the Pelicans. But the point is, it wasn't celebrated. Okay, but it was a good free agent signing. Randall has his limitations, which you and I both know about. But the point is, it was a good free agent signing. Barrett, where they picked him, you could say he could have gone a little bit lower, but it wasn't a bad pick. Quickly, very good pick for where they took him. And so now you have pieces that you can move. And the thing is, they did move. Okay. And that's, I think, where Heat fans have some frustrations, because it does seem at times like the Heat get a little too attached to their own players. Um, and that was an undrafted free agent problem before. It seems like they corrected that by not chasing Vincent, by not even negotiating with Struess, even though Max is a good player and has turned out to be a good player elsewhere. Now with Caleb, they were kind of saved from themselves by a stupid agent, but like they've gotten a little better about that kind of thing. There's no other way to put it. I mean, sorry, the
Let's
guy. I mean, he cost Caleb. And I look, I used to like the Caleb pizza at Mr. O1 down here. So now I got to order the Haywood Highsmith pizza. Look, that they've done a little bit of better job about that lately with those guys, but with the drafted guys, we may look back and say they should have moved Hawkes last summer. Now, did we know that
mm,
Hawkes was going to crash and burn this year? No. Did I project that? No.
no.
But I think this will get into the point of Tyler, and that's what makes this such a hard decision, because Tyler has blossomed with them. Nobody can argue differently. Tyler Hero has gotten better every single year. He has. And this past year was by far his best year, and his numbers stack up with some of the best guards in the league. However, he's doing an enormous extension. Okay. and it's clear he wants to get every penny. And so if that's the case, I do think you need to look around the league and see if you can sort of reconfigure your roster in a way that will allow you to build better later on. Do I think that they're going to ultimately move him this time? I don't. Okay, but I
Probably
think
not.
that's where I think Heat fans are like, okay, if you have good players, you can't be unwilling to move them. When you don't have that many assets, whatever you have that's an asset has to be on the table. That part of it I can relate to Heat fans. It doesn't mean that the deal was there, just means I can relate to them. But not everybody can do what the Pacers did either. Like Kevin Pritchard's really good at his job. He has been for a long time. I mean, most of those teams in that space. Look at how long Atlanta has been trying to get out of this. I know they made a conference final.
I was gonna point out Atlanta because they look
Right.
like a team that's trying to build through the middle too, and they're struggling to
So
do
is
it.
Chicago. So is
And so is
Chicago. And Chicago,
Chicago.
Chicago shouldn't have to because they're a big market, but Reinsdorf's never acted like it. So like, I don't. You should, you know what I'm saying? So this building through the middle stuff is not easy. OKC made a decision. We're going to build from the bottom. Okay. Utah's going to build from the bottom. Okay. Detroit was going to build from the bottom. It took them forever, by the way. Like the Heat fans. This is the thing about Heat fans. They're totally disingenuous. There is no way they would tolerate what Pistons fans were just put through. No way. And you
No,
cannot tell me that Detroit is a bad basketball market because it is not. Okay, I was
right.
there, obviously for the Dwayne's Shaq run, trying to get through them. I was there for the big, they're competitive. They've been a competitive franchise until this last like decade, where they just were stuck in the mud forever, and they finally found the guy. Like Cade is the guy. Okay, it took them forever to find the freaking guy. So I guess what it comes down to is we can talk about all different kinds of ways to build, but are you good at that building part? And Indiana is unique. They identified the absolute right person in Halliburton. And look, I didn't love the Siakam trade at the time. I thought it was okay.
I
Um,
have it here in front of me actually
yeah,
because I
go
wanted
ahead.
to get to the indie part. But also just real quick on Detroit and Orlando, the other important thing is like and they spent years trying to do it,
Mhm.
Orlando a little bit more successfully. And
Yeah.
this year there's an argument to be made like could they have been in this round if they were healthy and at
Hmm.
least had some offense, but they were banged up
Hmm.
all year and I think this year is the year that they can feel like, "Oh, they can go for it," so to speak. But with
Right.
Orlando and Detroit, they also have had along the way, like they acquired some draft capital. They
Hmm.
have more draft capital. They've used it. They've started to use a little bit more money. I think we're going to see an increase of that now. Like they
Yes.
haven't paid like a ton. Now they're going to start to like you saw Contavious Caldwell Pope last year go to Orlando, and that's a
Hmm.
deal like the jury's still out on, but that's
Right.
still at the very least a contract they can move. So with Indy, with the
Hmm.
Siakam trade, it was January of 2024. And I remember talking
Right.
about Siakam at the time being like, yo, he can actually swing, like he can help push a
Hmm.
team in the playoffs.
Hmm.
And, the Pacers did go to the conference finals last year, as much criticism as they received, but I feel like they're vindicated in their run so far, and they may end up going to the finals after this. The trade was Pascal Siakam for Bruce Brown, Kyra Lewis Jr., young player, Jordan Nwora, young player, a
Hmm.
first round pick, another first round pick, and another first round pick. So two first round picks in 2024. One was Jacoby Walter, one was Isaiah Collier, who actually looks pretty good in Utah. And then a
Right.
2026 first rounder. Obviously, we don't know who that's going to be yet. Toronto also received a trade exception conditional 2021 first round pick is least favorable of blah 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 blah. So like whatever,
Hmm.
like multiple firsts. It took a few firsts, and then the
Hmm.
Tyrese Halliburton deal, identifying the young star, which is a conversation that you've been having lately. It's like, all right, how do teams identify
Hmm.
the young star who you can acquire? And when Tyrese Halliburton was going into the draft, a lot of people, nerd basketball Twitter was high on him. I was high on him coming out of Iowa State, not
Hmm.
because nerd basketball Twitter was, because I don't give a shit what they think half the time, but Tyrese Halliburton was really good in college. You could see like, oh, he can be like a legit point guard in
Right.
the pros. And then once you pair him in Sacramento with De'Aaron Fox, it's like I don't know if they're gonna Sacramento's gonna have to make a decision at some point. And
Hmm.
people thought that they would choose Halliburton, and they chose Fox. And they traded Halliburton with Buddy Hield and Tristan
Hmm.
Thompson, who you forget was on the Kings,
Yes.
for Jeremy
So does he.
Lamb. Yeah,
Yes.
Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, Domantas Sabonis. So Buddy Hield
Hmm.
was in that deal as well. There was also a second round pick that became Jordan Walsh, Celtic, and there was a trade exception also. So it was a 3-for-3 deal essentially with a
Mhm,
second round pick in there. But Halliburton and Sabonis were the headliners, but Buddy Hield, who's a good player, was also in that deal. Jeremy Lamb, who at a time was a good player, Justin Holiday, who's like a rotation guy. There's other pieces of that. And these
mhm,
organizations they just hit on their trades. They hit on
right,
their trades. They hit on
mhm,
enough draft picks to make some of these trades as well. Like
mhm.
it's very there are very thin margins that sort of outlines who can get to this point and who can't.